Then I read a book. Yes, I'm losing it. A book has never made me cry because of how mad it made me. So that's a new one. And it makes me feel like an outsider because did we read the same book? Or is everybody that's reading this book just really into Jesus and God? I think April is the month where I've cried the most. I read 30 books in the month of April, and I want to talk to you guys about them because there were definitely some highs, but there were definitely some lows. I have things that I need to talk about, I have things that I want to discuss, and what better way to do it than with an April wrap-up where you guys can just get all of the hot gossip surrounding all of the books that I read this month. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this down. Okay, I hope you guys are ready for some juicy deets on all of the books that I read in the month of April. Classics, thrillers, fantasies, manga, literary fiction, Japanese literature. So I feel like, you know, my April was very eclectic. I definitely picked up some very interesting books. And overall, it was a pretty good reading month. And I think that the reason, like before you even ask it on the comments, the reason that I read this much is because I was so sad. There was literally nothing else that I could find the energy to do. There were just some days where the only way that I could escape these intrusive thoughts was to lose myself in a book. So if you're wondering how or why I even read this much, it's because it's the only way that I could find to survive. I hope you guys are ready to hear about all of the books that I read in the month of April. I hope you're sitting down. I hope you have some snacks, maybe some tea, coffee, your drink of choice. Basically, I hope you're comfortable because this is going to be a long one. So without further ado, let's get into the very first book that I read in the month of April, which was not this one. It was actually the Sonnets of William Shakespeare and A Lover's Complaint. I have never read Shakespeare before, so I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I just knew that I have always been intimidated by Mr. Shakespeare. Of course, I know of his plays, I know of his iconic quotes and iconic characters, but the main takeaway from Shakespeare is that his English is very hard for me to understand. And I know that there are like these editions of his plays that have the original text and then like normal English side by side so that you can actually understand what's going on. But I saw this on my trip to Taiwan and I was like, well, I am a hopeless romantic, so why don't I just start my Shakespeare journey with some of his sonnets? I mean, it was interesting. Like, yeah, it was an interesting collection of sonnets. There were some lines, I won't say that there were like complete sonnets that had me by the throat. There weren't any that had me like clutching my chest and being like, this is so emotional, this is so beautiful. But I can truly see that Shakespeare has a way with words. Obviously, he is a classic for a reason. Overall, I think this was just a very average read for me. It didn't really stay with me after I finished it. I read a couple of sonnets every night and, you know, it was an okay experience. I don't think I would actually recommend this one. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Not bad, not amazing. Definitely not something that I would recommend. But I am glad that I picked it up because at least now I am acquainted with Shakespeare and it does get me excited to try his other works. Early in the month, I actually did a reading challenge, which was reading for 48 hours or seeing how many books I can read in the span of 48 hours. And apparently I could read a lot of books in that span of time. I read all of these, plus a couple of ebooks. I do go a little bit more in depth on my thoughts of these books and how I felt, my experience reading them in the actual reading challenge, but let's do a quick overview of all of the books that I read for that challenge and my rating and just overall thoughts. One of the first books that I read for that challenge was The Paris Apartment, written by Lucy Foley. This is a thriller that takes place in, spoiler alert, Paris. Yes, and it's very mysterious. It was an interesting time. It had me hooked. The characters were entertaining and the different secrets that they were hiding also kept me hooked on the story. So I gave it a solid 3 star. You know, nothing to write home about too, but it was still a good time. Then I read Chain of Thorns, which was one of my most anticipated releases of 2023. I ended up giving it a 3.5 star, but the more that I think about it, I think it's an even lower rating, but I actually don't want to talk about that too much. Like, I don't want to think about it too much because at the end of the day, The Last Hours, it's a series that means a lot to me, and I read it at a time where I needed those characters in my life, and they mean so much to me. The story means so much to me, and it's become such a big part of my reader life that even though Chain of Thorns was a tiny bit of a disappointment, I did still enjoy it because I got to spend more time with these characters. And even though some of the decisions that the author decided to make or some of the things that she made our characters do, I wouldn't totally agree with, I am still very thankful that I got to read this book and that I get to live at the same time as these characters. Yeah, it wasn't the experience that I wanted to have, but I still really enjoyed it, I guess. And that's why I gave it a 3.5. Are there things that I would change? Oh, for sure, babes. But that doesn't mean that it has, you know what I mean? It has. Then I read 2 books by the same author, which was Eric LaRocca, and he focuses on writing horror literature or horror fiction. And for this challenge, I read The Trees Grew Because I Bled There. This is a collection of short stories. Some are horrific, some are terrifying, some made my skin crawl. It's like this really good collection of horror fiction. If you're into that, if you want to explore that genre, I feel like Eric LaRocca does a really good job at writing about things that are horrifying, but not making it so horrible that you can't get through them. So I feel like you need to be in a certain type of mood to read these books, but I was definitely in the perfect mood to read these books because I think I ended up giving The Trees Grew Because I Bled There 4 stars. And then I also read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. This one is one story, but it's also pretty short. I think it has less than 200 pages. And I think this one is even worse than The Trees because it's a lot more detailed in the goriness of it all, and it's a lot more harrowing because it's rooted in realistic events. So like, this is something that I could totally see happening in modern times. It's this relationship that is built online. One of the most horrifying aspects of this story is how realistic it is and the lengths that some people will go to show their love, and how some people confuse true love with other less noble feelings. It was a wild ride, but a very good wild ride nonetheless. I think I also gave this one 4 stars because even though I was appalled by what I was reading, I still found myself reading this in one sitting. I could not put it down. I need to read more books by Eric LaRocca. There's just something about his writing and the way that he chooses to tell a story that is so interesting, so unique. I've never really read anything like that before, so I'm definitely interested in reading more works by him. But these 2, oh my goodness, they were a trip. Then I read volume 18 of Jujutsu Kaisen, and this one I gave 4 stars. We are currently in the Culling Games arc, and you know, I'm just going to be honest, I'm here for the characters. I'm not really here for the plot. I stopped buying Jujutsu Kaisen volumes because I'm not convinced that this is one of my favorite mangas anymore, or like one of my favorite animes. No, anime for sure, because season 1 lives rent-free in my mind. But the more volumes of Jujutsu Kaisen that I read, the less involved I become in the story. And I think it has to do with how convoluted it all starts to feel after a while. The author himself puts notes in the volumes where he's like, I'm so sorry that this is so confusing. Even my editor was like, can you please leave these people a note? Like, they are so confused. I am confused. Like, can you please explain it in a way that makes sense? And the author also at times makes mistakes, and then in the next volume he's like, oh, some readers pointed out that I got it wrong, so let me fix my mistakes. It's not like I'm a professional at writing manga, but I am somewhat of a professional reader. After years of reading different manga and different books, I feel like I know what works, and I can see when some things are missing. Maybe I just need to give this story a few more volumes. Maybe it's going to start to make sense after we figure out what's going on. Like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I think I'm going to continue reading this online for now, because the $10 that I spend on each volume just for me to feel confused after I finish them is not worth it. Like, I am not paying to be confused. It's definitely been a bumpy ride, but I'm not giving up hope. I'm just keeping my money safe for now. Then I read another manga for this 48-hour reading challenge, and that one was One Piece. This is an omnibus version that has the first 3 volumes. And this was sent to me by Mary. Mary, if you're watching, you little devil, you are so smart. She has been begging me to either start reading the manga or start the anime. And when she saw that I wasn't following her instructions, she just went ahead and sent me the first 3 volumes like an absolute girl boss. And the thing is that I actually really enjoyed these. These are so fun. I really like the characters, and I'm already low-key simping over Soro. I'm already simping for that man. I've already been looking at Funko Pops. Like, I don't even know him that well, but I'm already willing to risk my bank account in his name. But of course, I also love Luffy, and he's just such a joy to read from. I love those types of main characters where they're just goofy and they have a heart of gold and they are stupidly powerful, or like they have a very unique talent or skill that makes them rise above the others, and they always have like these dreams that's what carries them throughout the whole thing, sort of like Gong from Hunter x Hunter. There's just something about those warm-hearted main characters that they just steal my heart from the get-go, and Luffy is definitely one of those. So I don't know if I'm going to be collecting the One Piece manga, but I'm definitely going to be reading more volumes because I really enjoy the story. It's about this little kid who's always wanted to be a pirate, and then when he grows up, he decides that he wants to become the king of the pirates. And of course, there are already so many pirates that are vying for this same title, and they're all looking for like this they're looking for this treasure that has been hidden for years and years, and whoever finds it apparently is going to be like the king of the ocean, or like he's going to be extremely rich. So Luffy is, you know, he just wants to be a pirate, and he wants to have fun, and he wants to have a crew that he can depend on. He wants to have friends, and it's just the whole thing. I'm really enjoying this story, so I'm definitely going to be continuing. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I would definitely recommend, and as soon as I finish all of the anime that I'm currently watching, maybe, who knows, I'll start watching the anime. Oh my god. My life is about to become One Piece. I can't believe this. I don't think I have the mental capacity to watch 1,000 episodes of one anime. Like, that is just so much commitment, but at the same time, like, I'm considering watching One Piece, but also watching Naruto and also watching Bleach. Like, all of the famous animes, you know, like the forefathers of all of the animes that are coming out now. Why am I considering watching all of them? Even though there's like hundreds and hundreds of episodes. But anyways, that is not what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about books. So yes, One Piece. I also read another manga for this challenge, and that one was Attack on Titan, No Regrets, the full or the complete color edition. This was a 5 out of 5 stars. What can I say? I love Levi. I'm sorry I'm so basic, but I do love happiness, and Levi gives me happiness. Levi is the definition of happiness, even though he doesn't have much happiness in his life. In Attack on Titan No Regrets, we're following Levi, and it's basically his backstory before he becomes the captain that he is now, and it's just him slumming it with his besties, living his best life, being a lawbreaker, a criminal. Each panel is colored in. It basically feels like you're watching the anime in manga form, which, you know what I mean. Listen, I'm not good at explaining myself. The point is, every single page is colored, and every single page is wonderful and beautiful. yeah, I mean, who doesn't love a good tied-in moment? You know what I mean? Sure, I'm not gonna show that because that's a spoiler. But just know there are a lot of iconic moments here. If you love the cleaning lady Levi, then you're gonna love this. Just saying, you should probably get this because it's really fun. Also, it smells really good. Nobody asked, but it smells really good. And of course, there's a bunch of Levi's, so like, why wouldn't you get this? The last book that I read for that challenge was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, and this one was very, very interesting. I think I liked it as much as I did because I didn't know where the story was going. So when I realized, you know, when I realized things, I was just really invested in the story. I really liked the characters, but there always seemed like there was something off. Like there was something that the characters or maybe even the narrator wasn't telling me, and I felt like they were purposely hiding facts to make them look better. And that's what kept me reading, because I was like, something is not making sense and I need things to make sense. So it was a very interesting reading experience. It's about this woman who lost her husband on a lake house, and then I think a year after she goes back to just be in the lake house, like she needs a moment alone. But then she starts spying on her neighbors because, well, one, she does have an alcohol problem, so she doesn't really have anything else to do. She's just drinking and spying on her neighbors. And then she starts to notice that her neighbors are exhibiting very preoccupying tendencies. What am I trying to say? Like, they start acting sus, basically. And she creates this whole fantasy in her head. She's like, oh my god, the husband is preparing to kill the wife. Oh my goodness, I need to call the cops. I need to call the detectives. Somebody's about to lose their life. She just takes it upon herself to save people that maybe don't need saving. Like, maybe this is all in her head. Like, maybe she's being a little bit delusional, but she literally has no one to stop her. So like, yeah. And then of course, more and more things start happening, not only with the neighbors, but like with herself and her past. And overall, it's just a very good thriller book. I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. I read this as an ebook, and I think I would actually recommend this one. Like, it was good. It was pretty entertaining. I had fun reading it. And I'm interested to read more from Riley Sager. So if you guys have any recommendations from this author, please leave them down below. So this next book, oh my goodness, okay. I had some expectations for it, not going to lie. I really thought I was going to love this because the previous book that I had read from this author became a new favorite classic. So when I opened up this book, I was like, I'm ready to have my life changed. I'm ready to just reconfigure my brain chemistry or whatever. 500 pages in, I was like, oh my goodness, I've been deceived by myself, but also by other people, because so many people have said that the Brothers Karamazov is better than Crime and Punishment, and they were so wrong for this. I can't believe that they would say that Crime and Punishment is not better than this, because this is basically religious propaganda. I'm so sorry, but like, it is. The first 500 pages, or maybe not even that, maybe the first 700 pages are all about God and believing in the second coming. I don't know what to tell you because I'm so disappointed. The way that Brothers Karamazov is described is that it's this crime mystery. Somebody's dad is killed and people believe that one of the sons did it. So it's like this whole mystery of who done it, like what's gonna happen, was it actually the kid, what led to such hatred for a son to kill his own father. That's kind of the story that I was being sold before I even picked this book up. That's not what we got. We got so many lectures on religion, and I mean, like, sure, fine, if that's what you want to talk about, sure. I do know that this was Dostoevsky's last novel, so I think he wrote it in like his very last days of being alive. So it kind of reads like that because it's just these characters going on and on about different aspects of life and morality and mortality and the things that we understand when our life is coming to an end, the importance of God and loving your neighbor, and you know, like just like all of the religious things that you hear, you can probably find here. Hi, Dio. I don't know, like, but I also feel like I'm the minority in this one, because when I went to Goodreads and I saw that the average rating is like 4.3 or some, you know, tremendously high number, I don't understand why people love this book so much. And it makes me feel like an outsider, because did we read the same book? Or is everybody that's reading this book just really into Jesus and God? Even though there are some other aspects of the story that don't immediately correlate to like religious things or religious lessons, I don't know. But then here's the thing. The very last part, like maybe the last 100 pages, I actually enjoyed. But then here's the thing, there's so many things, is my enjoyment of the very last 100 pages of a 980 page book really worth me giving this book a rating higher than 2.5 stars? I just don't know. But then I'm also very susceptible to influence. So when I saw that so many people were loving it, and when I started reading those reviews, I was like, I mean, you're not wrong. I don't feel the way that you do, but I guess I respect your opinion. And then maybe because of that, I raised my rating to 3 stars, even though initially I wanted to give this a 2.5. So the thing is, the final thing is, I honestly don't know how I feel about this book. You know, I feel like for 60% of this book, I was tired, I was exhausted, I felt like I was just being slapped in the face by religion, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. Yes, there are some quotes that do be scratching that brain just right, but then they're all, I don't know, it's all just surrounded by things that I did not care for, so I don't know. I'm so sorry if I disappointed the masses by not loving such a beloved classic, but this is not Dostoevsky's best work, and if you think it is, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. When I finished The Brothers Karamazov, I honestly thought that I was going to fall into this huge reading slump, because that book just did me so dirty. I didn't really want to talk about any other book. I didn't really want to think about another book. I just kind of lost myself in watching anime and watching K-dramas. So I definitely have a lot of shows that I need to talk to you guys about. So if you're interested in watching my anime and K-drama wrap up, you guys can go ahead and check out my Patreon, where I will be doing monthly TV show wrap-ups. The link is down below, just saying. But anyways, I thought enough is enough. I've watched like 5 different animes. I haven't touched a book. So why don't we try to get back on the horse by reading some manga? So that is exactly what I did. I bought the Wotakoi box set. This should be a thing. Like, I should buy more manga box sets, because the amount of serotonin that I got when I unboxed this was so beautiful. This is probably the happiest that I ever was this month. Yeah, I read the 6 volumes of Wotakoi and I loved it. I literally read them all in one sitting. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna read the first volume today, and then I'll see whenever I pick up the second one. But when I finished the first one, I was like, I cannot continue on with my day without reading Wotakoi. So I just picked up the second one, and then the third one, and then the fourth one, and then I was like, okay, I only have 2 volumes left. Maybe, you know, maybe I should take it a little bit slower, because after the 6th one, there's nothing else. Yeah, that didn't stop me. I just ended up reading each volume back to back, and when it was done, I put on the anime intro and I just started to learn the dance. When I tell you that my life has been taken over by Wotakoi, I am not kidding. I love this series so much. I love these characters. We're basically following this group of office workers. We have 2 girls and 2 boys. They are self-acclaimed otakus, which are basically people that love something a lot. So basically video games or manga, anime, cosplaying, you name it. It's basically their lives and them struggling to do normal people things like dating and being social, making friends, but with each other they find sort of like their comfort group. It's very much found family. And we also have 2 more characters that get introduced the further on we are in the story. And it's just a very heartwarming story of friendship and love. There's just so much to love about this series. April was a very hard month, so the fact that I had these manga volumes to rely on for my serotonin, it definitely helped in keeping me alive. So I recommend Wotakoi 1000%. I gave all of these volumes 5 out of 5 stars. I am easy. I am so easy. I just gave all of these 5 out of 5 stars. Like, what else was I supposed to do? This whole series has me on a chokehold, and I'm so happy that I owned all of them. I love this series so much, you don't understand. Then I read 5 volumes of Yona of the Dawn. I read volumes 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. These are great. You know, it kind of sucks that this is such a long series, because at times it feels a little bit repetitive. You can definitely see some factors or like some plot points being repeated, just like in different variations. Like, oh, Yona gets kidnapped. Oh, we have to battle this country that's waging war on us. And, you know, it gets a little bit repetitive, but I think that around volume 28, it starts to get a little bit better, because the past few volumes that I've been reading, they've been okay. They've been a good time. You know, I love spending time with the dragons and with these characters, and it's a really good time. I love it. I recommend it. I still do. Volumes 29 and 30, I don't know what the author wrote those volumes with, but oh my goodness, they were so good. I could barely put the volume down because I am reading them on my Kindle. I don't own them physically because it would just be way too expensive to buy like 40 plus volumes of a manga that's not even close to being done. I don't see myself collecting the Yona of the Dawn manga, but I would still really highly recommend it, because honestly, these characters, they've come such a long way, and you just love seeing from where they started and how far they've come, and the relationships that all of them have with each other, the banter, the interactions, just everything about them is honestly such a joy to read about. And seeing, you know, the cute little things that they get up to. Sometimes it's a little bit more intense than others. Sometimes it's much more action-packed than others. But overall, I just have a really good time reading these volumes. I think 26, 27, and 28 were 4 stars, and then 29 and 30, 4.5. I don't know what element I am missing to give them the full 5 stars. But so far I haven't found it, so 4.5. I mean, 4.5 is still pretty amazing, but hopefully I'll read a volume that gives me the 5-star feels. The last manga that I read this month was Spy Family Volume 9. Oh my goodness. Listen, I really love Spy Family. At this point, I love it more than Jujutsu Kaisen. I do love the Jujutsu Kaisen characters more than the Spy Family ones, but in terms of which manga I feel like is more well-rounded and which one is a lot more solid in its storytelling, I think it's Spy Family for me. I also recently binged seasons 1 and 2 of Spy Family, so my love for this series is just basking in the beauty of being alive and active. And volume 9, it was so fun. It was so funny. This little girl is so beautiful, so funny, she's just such a joy to read from. And the things that she gets up to, the shenanigans, the way that she talks with Anya, and her friendship with Anya as well. We also get a few new characters introduced, and it's just overall a very good volume. I just love them so much. Look at them. I also recently found out that the author of Spy Family, Tatsuya Endo, they actually hate Spy Family. They literally hate Anya, and they hate Yor and Lloyd. I don't know what interview they said this in, but apparently it's like a very well-known fact that the author of Spy Family hates Spy Family, and they straight up said, I'm still writing Spy Family because it makes me money. And There's just something so funny about the honesty of this author. I just found it very refreshing. But also, like, how can you not love these characters? And the fact that you can still make such an incredible story, even though you hate it. I don't know, there's just some kind of beauty there, some poetic justice. I don't know what it is, but I found that very funny. If you didn't know, now you do, and now we can laugh together. Then I read a fantasy romance. I have been in a very good fantasy romance mood. I've actually been struggling with finding more books like this, so if you have any recommendations for fantasy romances that you've read recently and that you think I would love, please leave them down below. I would literally owe you my life, because after I read A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft, my craving for fantasy romance has escalated tenfold. I do love how Hannah from A Clockwork Reader explains this book or describes it. She says it is and that actually really helped me in enjoying this book a lot more, because she says that this is Roy and Risa fanfic from Full Metal Alchemist. And Roy and Risa, I love them so much. They're basically my parents. Now that I think about it, they're literally my parents, because Risa is blonde, my mom is blonde, my dad is dark-haired, Roy is dark-haired. Did I just find my real parents? The point is, Roy and Risa fanfic, there's alchemy involved, there's this hunt involved where they have to find this magical fox, but this magical fox is also very dangerous, and so our little girlie here, she teams up with this boy over here, and he knows how to use alchemy. She is the daughter of a very famous alchemist, but she doesn't do alchemy herself. She's more of like a hunter, and she's just more of like the brains behind the whole progress. And he is the one that's more of the brawn? Am I even using that right? Anyways, the point is they team up to get this mystical or mythical fox, and it's a very dangerous hunt because they are also hated by everybody because they're not accepted in the community for reasons that I will not explain to you. So they're basically outcasts that team up together to get money, to get recognition, to help each other, and through this hunt, through this partnership, they get to know each other. And of course, you know, nothing is as it seems. He thinks that she's very cold and that she's not even attractive, and that she has a chip on her shoulder that doesn't let her make any friends or any connections. But the more time that they spend together, the more that they realize that they have more in common than they think. And I just had a really good time reading this. I think the writing of Alison Saft also helps in bringing out the magic and the beauty of this story. So overall, I think it's just a very strong fantasy romance. I had so much fun reading this. I read it in 2 days because I literally could not put it down. I think I started it in the evening, and then when it was like 2 or 3 a.m., I was like, okay, I need to sleep. I woke up, immediately started reading this book because I couldn't stop thinking about it. It's just that good. And imagining the two main characters as Roy and Risa definitely helped me in enjoying this book even more. So that's why I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Don't blame me. Love made me crazy. If it doesn't, you ain't reading it right. So yeah, For Wilder Magic, Alison Saft, 4.5 out of 5 stars. Very well deserved. That is all I'm going to say. Like, I was so invested in this story, I didn't even stop to annotate. There are so many beautiful scenes, so many beautiful quotes, but I was like, I need to keep reading. I'm so sorry, I'm gonna go back to you later. I never went back to it later. Then I read Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Tsukagawa. Simply delicious. I'm in story heaven with this book. I cried. I ugly cried with this book. It's a very slice of life type of story. There's not really a plot going on. It's more, we're following this random man who works in this street cart where he makes sweet bean paste buns, or like buns with sweet bean paste. Dorayaki. He makes dorayaki. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's like this pancake, and in the middle it has sweet bean paste. He's just working in this place. He does it. He doesn't really enjoy it. He's just like, I need to pay off my debts, so I'm just doing this as my life. When suddenly one day this old lady approaches him, and she looks like she's been through it. Obviously something happened to her because she has some injuries in her hands, but he doesn't really call attention to it because obviously manners. But she's like, hey, I want to work here. And he's like, well, actually, no, like we're not looking to hire, and we're not really doing that well either. Like, we don't need the help. But she's like, I still want to work here. So begins a very beautiful relationship between these two. It's very open and it's very honest and it's very heartwarming. And they talk about life. They talk about their struggles. They just form a very important and very wholesome bond between the both of them. But then of course life gets in the way and things start happening. It starts off as this very lighthearted and very sweet story, but then it delves deep into emotions and human connection and heartbreak, heartache, pain, so much pain, sadness, tears streaming down my face. There came a time where I was just letting the tears fall down my face because as soon as I dried them, more would come. So there just comes a point in this story where you just have to let the emotions course through you. There's nothing you can do to stop the onslaught of emotions that you get while reading this. And it seems like a pretty innocent book. Like, you don't think this is going to make you feel so much. There's a certain magic to Japanese literature that I haven't really found in any other type of literature. And I think that Sweeping Paste has opened my curiosity for Japanese literature, so I am more so than ever intrigued to read more books like this that just focus on human connections and human relationships. And there isn't necessarily a lot of plot, but the strength of the story relies on the characters and the conversations that they have. So yeah, Sweeping Paste. It was such a surprise. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I can still remember all of the tears that I wept over this book. I was also just very emotional. I think April is the month where I've cried the most. You know, I don't know if that's TMI, but yeah, April, pretty dehydrated if you ask me. Then I read another thriller, and this was actually a recommendation from one of my closest friends, and that is the same person that recommended, ay, ¿cómo se llama? 5 Survive. She also recommended that one, and I loved it. So as soon as she recommended another one, I was like, I'm not even gonna think about it. I have it, I'm gonna read it. I read it in a day because it was so good. It's called Burning Girls, written by CJ Tudor, and it's a thriller. Is it a mystery? Yes, it is a mystery. There's also a few elements of horror involved, which I was not expecting, but oh my goodness, they were so welcome. Apparently horror is like this new thing that I love. Burning Girls by CJ Tudor is basically about this mom and her daughter. Our main character, the mom, she works in the church, like she gives sermons and she, you know, she has her crowd, but suddenly she has to move away because there was an accident with one of the girls that used to go to her church. It's all very mysterious. We don't really know what happened. We just know that she's being pushed out of that state or that town because people don't want anything to do with her anymore. But then the new place that she moves to is even creepier, even scarier, even more sus, because it's this small town and people are keeping stuff from her, but they're not really telling her what it is. And she's trying to sort of fit into this new group of people that for some reason or other have decided that she does not belong there. And some people will go to extremes in order to make sure that she knows this. This book took me by surprise. One, because I had no idea what the story was about when I first went into it, and I think that's the best way to go into this book. And second of all, I wasn't expecting some of the elements that came to play, meaning the horror elements. I think like that just really spiced up the story in ways that I couldn't even imagine. And I honestly had so much fun reading this. Like, I was so hooked on the story. I was so interested and like invested in how the story was going to go, what was going to happen to these characters. Are they going to make it out of this hellhole alive? And all of these questions just kept me up all night. So much so that I finished this book in basically one sitting. I was just extremely hyper focused on this book and nothing could take my attention away from it. I ended up giving Burning Girls 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend, but also maybe leave it for October because the vibes are just immaculate. Oh my goodness, it was just so good. Like, I can't get over how good it was. Then I read my Patreon book club pick for the month of April, which was Daughter of the Moon Goddess, written by Su Lin Tan. This is the first book of a duology, and this one is based on Chinese mythology of, well, yes, the moon goddess, and also the archer. That's sort of, you know, they're like connected, they're like in love. And I have also read a book that is based on the same mythology, which was An Arrow to the Moon by Emily X. Pan. And I will say Su Lin Tan does a much better job at portraying this myth and like giving it her own spin. I really enjoyed reading Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and I also have an exclusive reading vlog for it up on my Patreon. So again, the link is down below. Would love to have you. Daughter of the Moon Goddess, I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars. As I mentioned before, I've been in a really good fantasy romance mood, and this one just scratched the itch to perfection. Yeah, it was a good time, and I'm definitely going to be reading the sequel, which is Heart of the Sun Warrior. Then I read Useless Magic, written by Florence Welch, and this is a collection of all of her lyrics and a handful of poems at the end. If you don't know, Florence Welch is the singer of Florence and the Machine, which is this band. They do incredible music. You've probably heard of them before, but if you haven't, Florence Welch is an incredible lyricist, and this was very kindly sent to me by one of my Patreons, so if you're watching, thank you so much. I had a fun time reading this one because apart from the lyrics and then the poems at the end, there's also doodles and just like sketches of when Florence was writing these songs, and also just random phrases, photos, inspirations behind the music. We also have this beautiful portrait of Florence. It's just like a collection of different images, lists. I did really enjoy the poems at the end of this collection. I wish there would have been more. There's literally just like a handful of poems, but in that collection you can see just how deep Florence's emotions go and just how well she knows how to string words together to make you feel something. I just wish we would have had more of that side of her instead of just lyrics that I can look up online. And yes, the pictures were pretty, the pictures were stunning, beautiful, we love to see it, but also I would have preferred more of the poetry side of this book. But overall, it was still a pretty enjoyable experience. I read this with my sister because we're both big Florence and the Machine fans, and we had the music in the background. We were just reading this together and singing it out loud. It was a good time. It made for some good memories, so I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read a book that I'm a little bit conflicted on. Yeah, it's The Tale of Princess Fatima, Warrior Woman. I mean, I love the cover. It's beautiful, it's stunning. It's probably one of the prettiest Penguin classics that I own. Like, just look at that color palette. This is the only Arabic epic named for a woman, recounting the thrilling adventures of a legendary medieval warrior. I was doing some research on this book after I finished it because it felt like I was missing something, and I wanted to understand what it was. And it turns out that this epic is actually around 600 or 700 pages long, and this edition is 150 pages. This is either an extremely condensed version of this epic, or there's something wrong with my copy. Obviously, it's the first option. So the translator, what she did was she chose a few of the tales inside of it and she tried to string them together in a way that would make sense. The tale starts before Fatima is even born. We are getting to know her grandparents, and then it jumps to when Fatima is already born, and then it jumps to when she's already killed like 1,000 men, and then it jumps to when she has a child, and then it jumps to when she dies, and it just felt a little bit all over the place. But I definitely see how the original material could have been a lot more fun. Obviously, I can't read Arabic. Unfortunately, I would love to read the original material, but I cannot. At times, it just felt like I was reading bullet points of the story itself. It just felt like somebody was telling me the most important plot points. Like I was reading maybe the SparkNotes version of this tale, which, you know, is not a great feeling. Like, I wanted to love this book because obviously girl boss, we love the only Arabic epic that's based on a woman, that's named after a woman. I think the translation doesn't do it justice. Yes, the tales that were chosen are really fun and they're also very quick. I don't know if it's because of the translation, but like some chapters are 3 to 4 pages long, and this whole war that's waged on the people takes like 2 pages for it to resolve itself. So I don't know, there's just something about the pacing, something about the writing, how cold and detached it felt. Like, it didn't give you a chance to connect to the characters or to care for them. Something that made me really upset. I again don't know if it's because of the translation or because of how it was written, but some events, some very triggering events that were talked about, the way that it was described and the way that it was sort of just glossed over made me really mad. And like, after that point, I was so mad I couldn't enjoy anything, because our main character, she gets sexually assaulted, and then the way that it's talked about, it's like, it happened, it's not illegal, so it's fine. Like, you're blessed with a baby, so it's fine. Like, you know, it was meant to be. And it just made me really mad the way that I don't know if that's how it's written about originally, or if just the translation misinterpreted something, but it just made me so mad. I was so mad I actually cried. A book has never made me cry because of how mad it made me. So that's a new one. I ended up giving this book 2.5 out of 5 stars, which is a shame because I wanted to support women, but this translation maybe just wasn't for me. Yeah, disappointed. Then I read a book. Yes, I'm losing it. Then I read Nobody, Somebody, Anybody by Kelly McLaury. And I don't want to talk about this one because I'm actually reading it for a reading challenge that is not up on my channel yet. But just know that I read Nobody, Somebody, Anybody, and it was a trip. It was a trip. I also read it in a day, but this does have like 292 pages, so it is feasible to read it in a day. And that is all I'm going to say, because I don't want to spoil the reading challenge. But this is how it looks. I even matched the tabs to the cover. I don't usually do that, but doesn't it look great? I don't know, there's something about it. I really enjoyed that aspect. So anyways, yes. The last book that I read this year, no, not this year, hello, it's only April. The last book that I read in the month of April, I actually finished this morning, and it is another classic. It's written by Charles Dickens, and it is Great Expectations. Grandes expectativas. Expectativas grandes. Grandes expectativas. Why am I translating? Okay, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I really struggled with this one again. I think like by the end of the reading month, I was just struggling with the books that I was reading. I was like, what's going on? Where is the vibe that I had with the Forwalder Magic and with Wotakoi? Like, where are those vibes? I need them back. Because I've read A Tale of Two Cities, I thought that this was going to be better than it was. And I think that's on me. Like, I should have gone into this with 0 expectations. No pun intended. I expected this to be better because of my past experience with Charles Dickens. So when I first started this book, and the first maybe 250 pages, I was really struggling to care for these characters. I was mostly just annoyed by them, and mostly annoyed by our main character Pip, because he's just a very complicated character, and I didn't like the things that he was doing, or I didn't like the way that he was treating the people that loved him best. But then of course we are all humans or whatever. But then by the end, like volume 3, which is the very last volume, this is when I finally started actually enjoying the book, and I started to actually care for these characters, and I became invested in the story. And that is 327 pages into the story, so it did take me a while. One of the major reasons that I was struggling so much to read this one is because I would read a chapter and then not pick it up for like 3 days, and those pauses or those continuous breaks between each chapter made it harder and harder for me to delve into the story and to understand these characters. I just sort of grew detached from it all. And so when I reached part 3, I was like, okay, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try to read at least a couple of chapters together so that I can create a better flow of the story and I can maybe get involved in the story, maybe care for what's going on. And it actually did work. I mean, I changed my mindset, I changed the way that I was doing things, and it actually worked for the better. It was a rocky road, not the ice cream. It was a rocky start, but I'm glad that I didn't give up. I'm glad that I didn't DNF, because by the end of it, I was actually pretty attached to this story. I really enjoyed the resolution. I enjoyed what Dickens did with these characters. I enjoyed seeing where the story was going, so much so that I ended up giving this 3 stars. A very solid 3 stars. I was hoping that it would be higher when I first started this, but honestly, halfway through, I was like, this is either going to be a DNF or a 2-star. So I think I'm pretty happy with the 3-star rating because, you know, it's a pretty solid book. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. You know, it's not the best of times, it's not the worst of times. It was a pretty solid book, and at the end of it all, I'm glad I read it. There are some pretty iconic quotes. Let me see if I can find the one. Once and for all, I knew to my sorrow, often and often, if not always, that I loved her against reason, against promise, against peace, against hope, against happiness, against all discouragements that could be. Once for all, I loved her nonetheless because I knew it, and it had no more influence in restraining me than if I had devoutly believed her to be human perfection. So you see, it does have some good quotes. The thing is, I hate Estella, so I couldn't really vibe with that love confession because I was like, why do you love a bully? But that's besides the point. That I don't really want to get into specifics. But yes, these are all of the books that I read in the month of April. Please let me down below how your reading month went. Did you read any good books? Did you read any books that you wish you wouldn't have? Let me know if you've read any of these books and if you liked them as much as I did. Way better than Once again, I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment. It really helps my channel out, and it helps motivate me not to completely deactivate my channel. So I would really appreciate that. I also have a Patreon where I post exclusive content, reading vlogs, reading sprints, and all of the good stuff. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would love to have you join my army of premium simpers. That's going to be all for today's video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed. I love each and every one of you, and I will see you next time.
Hey Jimmy, you nice, keep going.